Dr. Madangi Ganapathy has obtained her MSc in Genetics and Plant Breeding from Kerala University and PhD from School of Biotechnology, Madurai Kamaraj University. Having a passion for gaining knowledge and for instilling curiosity in fertile minds, she has been active in the field of teaching and research for more than 15 years. Her current research interest includes recombinant protein expression in plants, transgenic plant development and manipulation using molecular techniques, and analysis of changes in basic gene regulatory pathways during transgene expressions, nutraceuticals, and the role in alleviating certain chronic human diseases. She has a number of publications in peer-reviewed international and national journals.
Welcome to the lecture series on food microbiology. Today we are going to start a new topic, which is food spoilage. So far in the previous lectures of this series, we have discussed which are the various microbes which normally cause damage or spoil foodstuff, and what are the different types of mechanisms which can be used to control the growth of these microbes, how the various, we discussed a little bit about the hurdle technology, how the extrinsic and the intrinsic factors also combined together can reduce the microbial load on foodstuff. In the next couple of lectures, we are going to see how microbes can cause spoilage to different types of food. The broad division would be based on the type of the food product, the source of the food product, and the nutritional composition of the food product. We classify this based on the cereals, pulses and their products, vegetables and fruits. This will come under the broad division plant products. Then you have the flesh fruits, egg and poultry, milk and milk products. For each of these type of food, the microbes which infest them and the type of damage which they cause are totally different, basically based on one, nutritional composition, two, the temperature or the storage properties, and three, then what are the additives which have been added to this particular food during processing. How do you define spoilage? By definition, this is a process or a change which renders a product undesirable or unacceptable for consumption, which means that by spoilage there has been a change in the nature of the foodstuff, because of which the consumer says we cannot utilize this. And normally in the case of a microbial spoilage, this is the outcome of the biochemical activity of the microbial chemical process, in the sense that when the microbes consume the nutrients, their byproducts can be deposited on the food, or because of the consumption you can have a foul odor coming from the food, or a denaturation in the nature of the food, all of which combined together will make the food unacceptable to the consumer. In the worst case, it is a safety issue which causes illness to the consumer, from slight discomfort to lethality, where death is caused because of the presence of the pathogen in the food concerned. In less serious case, we talk about changes in the color, changes in the flavor, texture and aroma to the point of unacceptability. So in the picture we see, say, we have a food spoilage, color can, by changing the nature of this, see the order here changes, the color, the appearance changes, the outer texture changes you have here, then you have the changes in the breakdown in the texture, spoilage all together. So all these are indicators that you have some sort of microbial damage happening to the food concerned. In many cases, visible microbial growth may be apparent in the form of a slime. Sometimes you will see small dot-like colonies on the top, degradation of the structural components of the food. This in turn will cause a change in the texture of the food concerned. The rigid nature of the fruit or the vegetable might change, giving you a loose skin with abrasions or breaks in between, which in turn will make it easy for the microbe to enter and spread faster, thereby increasing the degradative rate in a faster rate. The other common manifestation would be the chemical products of the microbial metabolism, the gas, the pigments, the polysaccharides of odors and flavors. So even if there is no external change visible, if the microbe is already gotten internally, you will be able to make out by these changes in the fruit, the nature of the fruit concerned. The perception of spoilage is influenced by a number of characteristics, basically social. For example, what some cultures deem unacceptable would be accepted by some other cultures. Especially this happens in fermented products. How much, what is the duration of the fermentation, what is the nature of the food concerned. So that would affect, so what is acceptable in some cultures is going to be considered as spoiled food in some other cultures. In some products such as well matured cheeses and game birds that have been hung for an extended period, this is accepted by some cultures and some people, whereas in many cultures it is highly objectionable. They say that it has been spoiled. So again, the term spoilage has a totally different perception, especially when we talk about fermented foods. Now, when we talk about the factors which control food spoilage, we can talk about one, the physical changes which happens to the food. These physical changes which cause spoilage or change in the texture or odor, or what we call as the spoilage to the particular food concerned, can be because of the variation in temperature, variation in the relative humidity, the light where it is stored is a variation, are you having fluctuation in that, then mechanical damage to the food concerned. All these are the physical parameters which can spoil a food concerned. In the case of the chemical parameters which can promote food spoilage, we talk about the enzymatic reaction, the non-enzymatic reactions, rancidity, chemical interactions. So all these can be the enzymatic and the non-enzymatic reactions. Typical example would be the Maillard reaction. For example, when you cut a potato and leave it open, after some time you see the brown stuff on the outer side. Similarly, cut apples. So this is an enzymatic reaction, we call it as a Maillard reaction. So this is a normal procedure, but still it is a chemical change cause it is a spoilage if you talk about that, and it is because of a biochemical parameter there. Similarly, rancidity. This would be because of the presence of the fatty acids which are present, the lipids which are present in the food concerned, or when you are combining 2 or 3 stuff together and processing the food, you can have chemical interactions between the components of the food. In some cases this would produce good effect, in some cases this would produce bad effect. So that again depends upon what type of food and what is the nature of the additives which you have added. So all these come under the chemical parameters. When we talk about the microorganisms causing spoilage, as you know, we have 3 major categories there. You have the bacteria, the yeast and the mold. Now here also we have to, if we are talking about food processing, in processing we do use certain microbes. For example, fermentation, conversion of milk to cheese or to yogurt or to curd. So many products are there. There you have certain beneficial microbes which are used, but the same beneficial microbes can also become non-acceptable when the fermentation time increases. Then we say it has got spoiled. Or suppose if the alcohol becomes the end product, or it produces some disflavor because of the metabolic reactions, then these microorganisms, now we talk about, they are now spoilage organisms, no longer beneficial. Then the other reasons for food spoilage would be insects, rodents, animals, birds, etc., either post harvest storage or during storage. All these insects and rodents and animals and birds can contaminate the food and cause damage to the particular food product concerned. Now, when we talk about the physical appearance, the changes in the food concerned, one aspect we have to think about is the mechanical damage. For example, if you are taking a fruit, you can talk about physical bruising, the injury caused on the surface. Always remember, the outer skin or the epidermis of the fruit is the one which is actually protecting the nutrition composition inside, and that normal in any fruit concerned, the outer epidermis has to be unblemished. If the skin is bruised or damaged, one, you will have a discoloration in that particular area. 2, that small breakage is sufficient to give a path for the microbes to gain entry into the fruit and start growing there, absorbing the nutrition inside the fruit. This in turn causes serious hazard and it reduces the value of the product concerned. So the final damage might be because of the microbial growth, but the initial damage which caused this because of the physical damage of the outer epidermis. And when does this occur? This occurs during harvesting, packing, during the packing house, during the operations, handling and transportation, and subjected to compression and vibration. So all these things, like how you are harvesting the fruit, where you are storing it, how are you packing it, and how is it getting transported, how safe is it packed. So all these factors can cause injury to the skin. So this is the first step. So as a result of this injury to the skin concerned, what happens there? The cells get ruptured. So when the cells open, you have a discoloration first, and you can have enzymatic browning. Then the second aspect is you have a loss of moisture content. The fruit, which has a definite, for example, if we are talking about the fruit, each fruit has a specific water content. So when there is an injury, you will have more evaporation there. So loss of moisture content. This in turn would lead to the shrinkage of the fruit, the loss of weight, and then when you have an excess of moisture and a direct entry into the fruit concerned, it will cause microbial growth. All these will cause spoilage. The second aspect is in the case of dry and brittle products. For example, your chips, breakfast cereals, the frozen food products. Here, if you are used to a specific shape and a specific type, if instead of a biscuit you get a broken powder, this is not acceptable. So this can be because the pack fell down during transport, or maybe because of something else. So this is again, this is a dry product, but because it is dry, microbial growth might be less, but still this is unacceptable. So preventing measures for this would be a well-designed packing system, protect the products from vibration and mechanical damage during transportation as well as distribution. Now let's start talking about which are the steps or which are the stages where microbial spoilage can happen. In the case of a plant and the plant products, microbial problems can occur at all stages. First of all, as the plant is growing in the field, okay, the plant can be exposed to the plant pathogens, especially fungi. But bacteria and virus can also infect, but the most probable pathogen there would be the fungal spores. So what happens there? For example, you have so many insects which attack the stem borers, the sap suckers, etc., which have proboscis, small needle-like mouth parts. So when they suck the cell sap, they are creating a hole or a path in the plant concerned. So through that, the fungal spore can go in, and when a stem sucker or a stem borer, suppose it has taken food from a fungus infected plant or a bacterial infested plant, the cell sap would have that. And as it goes and again bores a hole in a plant which doesn't have any infection, it can pass on the infection to the uninfected plant. So like that, the infestation can happen in the plant. So you have the fungal pathogens, you have the bacteria, and this happens in the field itself as the plant is going. So once the plant is infected, the infection spreads throughout the plant. Now post-harvest spoilage can also happen. There is no boundary between the plant pathogens and spoilage organisms because many plant products are made up of living plant tissue even after harvest. Now this statement actually requires explanation. See, when you are going to harvest a product from the plant concerned, whether it is a grain like your rice, wheat, barley, etc., or whether it is a fruit or a vegetable, that what is harvested is from a living part. And this grain or a fruit or a vegetable will still respire. Okay, it is still a living stuff. Even though it is no longer attached to the mother plant, it will still respire. And as you know, the byproducts of respiration are carbon dioxide and moisture, water. Okay, so when you are storing this, as long as this original grain or the fruit was attached to the mother plant, the loss of moisture because of respiration would be compensated because the mother plant has the phloem transport, which can xylem and the phloem. Because it is attached, whatever water is lost gets replaced. But once it is detached from the mother plant, it still respires. But what happens is that there is no compensation for this respiration, for this water lossage. Okay, so that is one thing. The second is whichever pathogen has already infected the plant there is every possibility that the fruit or the vegetable or the cereal can contain remains of it. So even after harvest, it can still have the microbes. And when you are storing them, for example, all of you know that the cereals, we normally dry them. The water activity has to be very less in the grains before they get stored, whereas you don't dehydrate the fruits and the vegetables, you want them fresh. So that moisture is required, and this now makes it very ideal in the case of microbes to proliferate. And so what happens, so in the case of a plant growing in a field, it will have multiple steps, or it will have multiple defense area to protect against invasion. The first, outer coat, the outer surface is usually protected by a tough resistant cuticle. Then you have the secondary metabolites like the phenolics, the phytoalexins, the lignin. All these secondary metabolites, the tannins, the resins, all of these secondary metabolites are actually defense mechanisms of the plant to protect it from microbial invasion. And also, in many cases, many plant tissues initiate the production of phytoalexins in response to a pathogen, microbial invasion. The low pH of the tissues of many fruits provide considerable protection against bacteria, and the spoilage of these commodities is usually by fungi. And in contrast, many vegetables have somewhat higher pH and may be susceptible to the bacterial spoilage. So when we are talking about vegetable and fruit products, as we said, the damage is mostly going to be caused by, for example, fruits that have a low pH, and this low pH normally will prevent the bacteria from growing and damaging them. But there, the fungi have no such rules, so they can grow and spoil. Whereas in the case of many vegetables which have a higher pH, they get spoiled by bacteria. So depending upon the type of the product, the spoilage organisms are going to be differing. Cereals, pulses, nuts and oil seeds are usually, they are dried after harvest, and they have very low water activity. So because of this low water activity, the normal microbes cannot grow in them and spoil them. But here the spoilage flora would be xerophilic and zero tolerant fungi. Now let's talk about vegetables. Fresh vegetables contain microorganisms which enter into them via soil, water, air and other environmental sources, and these can include plant pathogens. And during storage, the presence of air, very high humidity and higher temperature also will increase the chances of spoilage. The common spoilage organisms here basically are different types of molds. They especially Penicillium, Phytophthora, Alternaria, Botrytis and Aspergillus. And among the bacterial genera, species from Pseudomonas, Erwinia, Bacillus and Clostridium are important. So these fungal species and these bacterial genera are the ones which cause maximum damage to stored vegetables. And how do we judge? The common vegetable spoilage is generally called as rot. Here we talk about that depending upon the changes happening to the color on the outer epidermis, we call it as the black rot, the grey rot, the pink rot or the soft rot. For example, this is a bacterial soft rot caused by Erwinia and carrots in cabbage. In addition to the changes in the color, microbial rot will cause off odor, meaning the smell will change and the loss of texture. The nature of the fruit will change there. So what happens when these microbes infect and spoil the fruit? The first observed form of spoilage is a softening of the tissue due to the pectinolytic activity of the microorganisms. The outer covering, the epidermis of the fruit is normally pectin, and this is and the bacteria normally will have a pectinolytic enzymes. So when the pectinolytic enzymes act on the outer cover, the rigidity of pectin will go off, so you will have a softening of the tissue concerned. This pectin is a methyl ester of 1,4-polydegalactouronic acid, and the other pectic substances are major components of the middle lamella between the cells which make up the plant tissue. So once the pectin is broken up, the tissue integrity is completely lost, then the individual plant cells would be easily infected by the bacteria and they would get killed. So the first layer of protection, pectin, If that happens to get softened and becomes hydrolyzed, that paves entry path for the microbes to infect, proliferate and spoil the vegetable. To prevent this, refrigeration, vacuum or modified atmosphere packing, freezing, drying, heat treatment and chemical preservatives are normally used so as to contain the microbial proliferation and to reduce the spoilage of vegetables. Now, normally most of the spoilage microorganisms of vegetables are not pathogens, but you do have the transmission of enteric pathogens like Salmonella and Shigella by direct contamination from farm workers and the feces of birds and animals, the use of manure or sludge as fertilizer, or by the use of contaminated water. The plant might not be infected, but using contaminated water for washing during irrigation, or maybe if the farm workers had the disease, then there is a possibility that the pathogens can be get transferred to the vegetables and in turn would infect the people consuming them. Celery, watercress, lettuce, endive, cabbage and bean sprouts all have been associated with Salmonella infections, including typhoid and paratyphoid fevers. So, it's better to take steps to avoid microbial spoilage, irrespective of whether the spoilage is caused by a pathogen or a non-pathogen organism. Organisms like Clostridium botulinum have a natural reservoir in the soil, and any products contaminated with spoil can be assumed to be contaminated with the spores of this organism, probably in very low numbers. Normally, this is not a problem unless the processing or storage conditions are sufficiently selective to allow subsequent spore germination, growth and production of toxin. Okay, we have already dealt with Clostridium botulinum as a lethal food poison, in many cases causing death. Okay, so what happens is that this Clostridium botulinum has a natural reservoir in the soil. It is a normal soil dweller. Okay, so if you have soil, if the vegetable or the fruit is contaminated with soil, there is every possibility that that vegetable or the fruit might contain the spores of Clostridium botulinum. Spores are extremely hardy structures, as you know. Normally they are dormant and they will not cause any change, they will not cause any damage. But the problem is going to come if the spore starts germination, and then you are going to get the active toxin production. And for the spore to start germination, you should have conducive environment. So, if during the processing of the particular product or during storage, if conducive conditions come, then the spore, the dormant spore of Clostridium botulinum, which was adhering to the fruit or the vegetable, can as well start growing up, germinating and start producing the botulinous toxin, which in turn can cause lethality, starting from mild discomfort, at the most lethality and death to the consumer concerned. Fruits. Fruits are high in carbohydrates, generally 10% or more, very low in proteins and have a pH of 4.5 or below. So, because of this condition, high carbohydrate, low protein and a pH of 4.5, the microbial spoilage of fruits and fruit products is confined to molds, eels and aciduria bacteria, meaning those bacteria which can tolerate the low pH here. The damage here again is called as rot, especially by the fungi of the genera Penicillium, Aspergillus, Alternaria, Botrytis, Rhizopus and some similar species. And the type of damage is visualized to the changes in the appearance as a black rot, grey rot, soft rot, brown rot, etc. For example, this is a rot caused by Penicillium italicum in citrus fruits. And to reduce the spoilage, we normally preserve the fruit and fruit products by refrigeration, freezing, drying, reducing the water content and by heat treatment. Penicillium expansum causes a soft rot of apples, and the rot itself is typically soft and pale brown. You see the emergence of a ring of tightly packed conidiophores bearing a large number of blue conidiophores. We call it as the blue mold of the apple. And this Penicillium expansum produces mycotoxin patulin. Okay. Now, in normal cases, in unfermented apple juice, this is a contaminant. The production of the mycotoxin pathogen is a contaminant. But this is not normally seen in cider, which is fermented. Now, soft drinks, fruit juices, preserves, vegetable juices. This can both be carbonated and non-carbonated. Fruit juices and preserved and concentrated fruit products. All of these are low pH products. And so, because of the low pH, the only microorganisms which are capable of spoiling them are going to be acidic molds, yeast and bacteria. So, if appropriate preservation methodology is not going to be used during the storage of these products, then the spoilage is going to be caused by the acidic molds, yeast and bacteria. In carbonated beverages, you have some yeast species like Candida piquea which can grow. So, when these grow, what you see is turbidity. So far the clear solution, if it was the beverage was a clear solution, as these organisms grow up, the solutions start becoming turbid. So, the presence of turbidity, for example here, is an example that you are seeing microbial growth in the particular beverage concerned. Some lactobacillus and leuconostoc species can also cause cloudiness. Leuconostoc can also cause ropiness. This ropiness is because dextrans get produced in the product. Fruit juices are also susceptible to spoilage by molds like then lactobacillus, leuconostoc, etc. Molds and acetobacter can grow if enough dissolved oxygen is available. Yeast can cause both oxidation, producing carbon dioxide and water, and fermentation, producing alcohol and carbon dioxide. So, depending upon the type of damage caused by yeast and whether the byproduct is carbon dioxide and water or by alcohol and carbon dioxide, the nature of the beverage in which the yeast is growing will change. To prevent the growth of these potential spoilage microorganisms, normally we add several additional preservation methods which include heat treatment, freezing, refrigeration and addition of chemical preservatives. Now, let us see what are the normal flavor or the aromatic changes which happens during spoilage. Nitrogenous production of nitrogenous bases, for example, bad eggs, meat, eggs, fish, etc. get changed. The chemical cause of this is the production of ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, etc. And these are caused by pseudomonads, acinetobacters, etc., clostridia, etc. Then dairy products, vacuum packed meats, etc., you have the soaring. This is because of the production of acids, acetic acid, lactic acid, citric acid, butyric acid, etc., mainly caused by lactic acid bacteria, the Brocotrix, bacillus, etc. Fruit juices can become fermented, can become alcoholic. Basically, ethanol gets produced there. This is mainly by yeast. The bread, cake, etc. can have mustiness. This is produced by molds. Then vegetables can become cresol, indole and secol can be formed. This is mainly because of the presence of Erwinia and Clostridia. Then the various type of food can have a change like garlicky smell, for example, the production of trimethylcene, etc. The causative organisms are unknown here. Then the meat can have a fruity smell. This is because of the production of esters. The causative organism is Pseudomonas. Then meat, egg, males can get spoiled by Pseudomonads also. So, depending upon the nature of the microbe which is infesting, the manifestation of spoilage as well as the change in the odor, aroma, flavor, texture in turn will change. For example, if we are going to talk about the texture problem, in the meats, confectionery, etc., you will have polysaccharide projection. It will have an outer slime layer. This is so it will be sticky and slimy when you touch, indicating that a change has happened, a biochemical change has happened to the stuff concerned, especially in meat. This is caused by Pseudomonas fragae, leuconostoc, etc. Then bread, milk, etc., you see rope-like structures. This is the chemical reaction is the presence of polysaccharides, mainly by alkalogenous species. Milk, you have a bitterness, which is caused by bacillus. Hard cheese can be, you have holes present. These holes are because of the production of gas. So, as the gas escapes, you have the holes getting formed in the cheese concerned. This is caused by coliforms. Then Vegetables and fruits get softening and rotting, as we saw. This is because of the pectinases, the cellulase, xylanases, etc., all of which are synthesized by the microbes. The hydrolytic reactions of the microbe enzymes, especially of the genera Erwinia, Clostridia, yeast, etc. Milk and meat can become curdling because by the production of acids, mainly the organisms would be lactic acid bacteria. So we saw the changes happening to the odor, to the texture, depending upon the product concerned. The nature of the change also changed depending upon the organisms. Now, when you have evidences for the visual spoilage, you can have holes, you can have bubbles, then you have fish eyes in the blouse, you have bloating. The surface will become bloated. Then you have the surface growth markers, like you will see the spores on the molds. You will see small black dots on the surface of many vegetables and many type of food. Even bread, you can see that layer of gray spores and black spores. The surface, you will have discoloration and the growth. In beverages, you will have the clear solution will turn either cloudy or it will become turbid, indicating that organisms are growing there. Then pigments, you will see discoloration. Either the pigment will get denatured or it will have more different color, which indicates its spoilage. For example, fluorescent pink dot. In the case of cheese, you will have red spot. In the case of brine vegetables, you will have blackening or browning. Dairy products, you see blackening. All these visuals these are the visual evidences indicating that the food has started getting spoiled, that it has started having microbial growth, and you possibly would have either some sort of damage happening to the food concerned. So far in this series, in this particular lecture, we saw how vegetable and fruit products are getting spoiled, what are the type of damages which are caused to them, and which are the organisms which cause this damage. You saw the visual evidence, how the texture damages, and how you can spot that spoilage is happening in the particular product. We will see the other indicators in the coming series of lectures. Thank you.